Africa is a continent of 54 independent countries. But do you know when they all became independent? Anyways, here are the independence days of Africa. Like, subscribe and share please to help us. Thanks and enjoy. People may say that Ethiopia gained independence in 1941 from the occupation of Italy, but in reality it has always been a country since before the colonization of Africa. However, Liberia gained independence in 1847, over 2 decades after slaves from America returned to the continent and settled with the locals of the land. Down south, South Africa became a unitary state in 1910, but eventually became a republic in 1961, a year after the Year of Africa. Even though Egypt was established more than 3000 BC, it gained independence from England in 1922, though it would go over other versions of independence as time would move forward. Their neighbor, Libya, gained independence as the Kingdom of Libya in 1951 from Italy, but it will become a republic after a bloodless coup almost 20 years later, spearheaded by Muammar Gaddafi. Half a decade later, more countries in the north gained independence, as Sudan detached from England and Egypt on the first day of the year, but yet again it would undergo disestablishment 13 years later. As you can see now, this is a trend with the first countries becoming independent. Morocco and Tunisia also became independent 2 months later, albeit about 2 weeks apart. Morocco gained its independence 2 separate times from Spain and France within the same year, and Tunisia though gained its independence from France, calling itself the Kingdom of Tunisia. It would become a republic a year later. Eventually, sub-Saharan Africa began its independence, with Ghana being the first country in 1957 to separate itself from England. Meanwhile, France sought to rule over autonomous African nations, hence the creation of the French Community. However, Guinea refused to be part of this community and gained independence in 1958. As 1959 was quiet, 1960 was a very eventful year, as most of the countries in the French community gained full independence, while Nigeria and Somalia gained independence from England. In the case of Somalia, Somaliland gained its independence 5 days before Somalia. However, they have not been recognized since. In 1961, Sierra Leone gained independence, followed by Tanganyika at the end of the year. In 1962, the smaller neighbor countries of Rwanda and Burundi both gained independence from Belgium on the same day of July the 1st. 2 days later, Algeria, after a fierce struggle with France dating back to 1945, eventually gained their independence. Down in East Africa, Uganda gained independence from England in October of that year to round up the Eastern independence. A year later, Zanzibar gained its independence and Kenya followed suit, only for Zanzibar to be united with Tanganyika. Tanganyika and Zanzibar joined to become Tanzania, the name itself being the amalgamation of Tanganyika and Zanzibar. Shortly afterwards, Malawi gained independence in the middle of the year, as it was formerly called Nyasaland, and then Northern Rhodesia left the Central African Federation in the month of October, changing its name to the Republic of Zambia. A year later, Gambia gained its independence and the continent remained quiet until the following year in 1966, as Botswana and the Kingdom of Lesotho gained independence from England. 1967 remained relatively quiet, but when 1968 came, the smaller nations of Mauritius, Swaziland, and Equatorial Guinea gained independence. 6 years later, Guinea-Bissau was the last of the Guineas to gain independence after a 10-year war with Portugal, and in 1975, Mozambique, the islands of Comoros, Cape Verde, and São Tomé and Príncipe became independent from Portugal and France. Angola then gained its independence in the month of November from Portugal. Mozambique, like Guinea-Bissau, were engaged in a 10-year war against Portugal for independence, while Cape Verde was seeking independence alongside Guinea-Bissau and gained their independence a day before Comoros, a union of islands that voted to be independent, while their neighboring island of Mayotte decided to remain with France. A year later, Western Sahara declared independence from Spain. However, it was annexed by Morocco and Mauritania. Mauritania waged war against the Western Sahara but withdrew after 3 years, recognizing the Western Sahara. However, the country remains in dispute with Morocco regarding its independence. Seychelles separated from England in the middle of the year, and then Djibouti rounded up the 70s by gaining independence from France in June of 1977, after 2 rejections in previous referendums. In the 80s, Rhodesia, after a 10-year war, declared independence and renamed itself Zimbabwe, and nothing happened until the 90s, when Namibia gained its independence from South Africa. The UN had declared that South Africa's annexation of the territory was negligent of the well-being of the locals. Hence, the occupation was considered illegal. This in turn began the pressure of granting the independence of Namibia. Then in 1993, Eritrea finally gained independence from Ethiopia, who had annexed Eritrea for close to 30 years. From then on, there were a few communities and people that tried to be independent, but most have been unsuccessful. Nations like Western Sahara and Somaliland are the biggest nations seeking independence. However, South Sudan is the latest nation to gain independence, which happened in 2011, after years of autonomy. This makes South Sudan the youngest country in the world at the moment. Do you see any countries that could be born in the near future? Let us know in the comments as time will tell. Thanks for watching. Will we see you in the next one?